Yes, supervisors, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate the time today and also the thoughtfulness of how you're approaching this really important decision for our community, for our region. I think everyone has visited the site and has seen the current situation at Howard Terminal. And what we're trying to do here is really educate folks on the vision of our project, where it's going, and how your involvement can help it become a reality. And so I have some slides that I'm going to lead in on and then hand it off to the Honorable Mayor Libby Schaaf of Oakland to kind of do the second half of the presentation. But let me get started here. Bear with me. Supervisor, can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Great. So, this is evening view of the vision of a new waterfront, a waterfront with vibrancy, economic activity, and development that's really just, something that could be achieved if we work together as a team. And so as folks know, we've been working for the last 5 years to advance a really exciting project at Howard Terminal, hand in hand with the city of Oakland, to build a brand new privately financed ballpark for the A's, to ensure the A's are here for many generations to come, winning more championships and bringing more economic activity, jobs, and also just environmental benefits to an area that has never really achieved its potential. And as you can see here, we have a design for an incredible ballpark with a rooftop park, 34,000 seats, an incredible public open space. As you can see, here's the project attributes. You can see 1.5 million square feet of commercial development, 270,000 square feet of ground floor retail, the ballpark, obviously, 3,000 residential units, including affordable housing on site, and 18 acres of public open space, including the rooftop park, which will be available for members of the community to come to on non-game days. It's really going to be an incredible waterfront attraction, bringing people to Alameda County from around the entire state. This will be a destination for folks to come and see it and be a part of it, and will allow us to not only have a great ballpark experience, but to enhance the quality of life for Oaklanders and residents of Alameda County. So we have a very ambitious and exciting project, one that we have been pushing forward on for, like I said, about 5 years. We're at a critical juncture where we really need to know from a public policy perspective that the city, the county, that all the elected officials are supportive of this direction. We're running out of time at our current facility at the Coliseum, and we're hopeful that we can get the necessary answers to proceed with this project on a pace that makes sense. So that's kind of the overview. One important consideration here that folks have asked a lot about is the compatibility with the Seaport. We have spent a great deal of time, over a year, negotiating with the Port of Oakland to ensure that this location can be developed in a way that will allow for a thriving port, as well as a thriving commercial center and waterfront ballpark project. And we've done that with tangible concessions. The turning basin, which is allowing us to take a portion of this site and turn it into open water for the large ships to turn, which will help port operations for many generations to come. Also creating a buffer area where there'll be no residential development on the 13, 14, 15, and 17, the parcels that are closest to the port and the maritime activities. And also on having a really comprehensive transportation plan, one that will invest hundreds of millions of dollars in offsite infrastructure and really allow this area to coexist with the port in a more meaningful way. So we think those are all incredible attributes of the project, and one that will ensure that the port operations can continue to thrive, which is obviously something that we're seeing in the news basically every day. Some of the other key components of the project, we're talking about over 2 million people coming to the location every year. That's an incredible amount of people. There's almost nothing like a baseball stadium to have folks come out. We have 18 acres of the public open space, as I said, over $400 million in community benefits, including affordable housing, job benefits, local hire, a variety of things that we've worked almost 3 years with a variety of local community groups to have something that makes sense. And I think maybe most importantly for everyone here, a real focus on environmental sustainability and justice. We had the AB 734 legislation, which passed in 2018, which allows for really the highest standard of environmental sustainability, clean air, greenhouse gas neutrality, LEED gold standards on everything we're doing. This project will be one of the greenest projects in the history of the state. And to have that as a beacon here in Oakland and in the East Bay in Alameda County is really a feather in everyone's cap. So it's something that we're hopeful that people can get behind. We didn't need to make those type of commitments, but we felt that it was an important part of who we are as an organization and how our community is at the vanguard of these important global topics. As you can see too, here's some incredible views of the open space. That's the Performing Arts Center. We're keeping the actual cranes as pieces of public art. You can see both the residential and commercial development, the ballpark, how it's all integrated in a very thoughtful way. And like I said earlier, this is going to be a regional draw. This will help all of Alameda County, both financially as well as a location where people will come from other counties. One other thing to really stress is that, we have 134 unions that have endorsed this project. That's the most in the history of the state of California on any one project. We are committed to obviously using union labor, both operationally as well as in the construction. This project will generate over $7 billion in economic activity, 6,000 permanent jobs, ensure that the A's stay in Oakland. It's really a grand slam home run project, and we're very hopeful that the county will see it as something that they can participate in a meaningful way and a thoughtful and responsible fashion, as you guys have articulated clearly in all our meetings. Some of the other pieces of the puzzle here, obviously the bike and pedestrian facilities, extending the Bay Trail, helping with the freight access to the Port of Oakland with the turning basin, protection against sea level rise. Obviously everyone who just got drenched by the rain, we've seen all the impacts of climate change. Our project will invest in this area and ensure that we will be resilient for sea level rise. Obviously, handling any of the remediation of the site is also a critical component and something we're investing up front to do all these things. Billions of dollars in private capital to make that happen. And then maybe most importantly, having the housing and the affordable housing as part of the project. So we have an incredible vision, something that we've spent hundreds of millions of dollars to even get to this point. We're hopeful that we can actually get to a yes, beyond even a non-binding vote, to a binding vote from all the key parties as soon as possible, because we are running out of time in our current situation. We are under a lot of pressure from Major League Baseball to get to an answer. Our current facility is over 10 years past its useful life, and we need to find a home for the A's with a Major League facility for a Major League team. So I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Shaft, who is going to take the next part of the presentation.
I think there are a few questions before we turn it over.
Oh, okay, yes. One question I wanted to answer just immediately was something that Commissioner Valle mentioned. We are more than open to funding any research or analysis that you guys need to do. We've done that with the city of Oakland. We have an agreement in place to do that with their analysis. And we can do it in a way that hopefully makes sense for all parties. But we're very open to that, and just let us know how that would work. And I can have my legal team work with yours. But that's something that if that's an impediment or a challenge that the county is facing, we hope to be part of the solution.
Thank you. Supervisor Chan.
Thanks, Dave, for the presentation. I just had a couple of questions, and I don't mean these to be negative in any way or indicative of what's going to happen today. But in terms of the negotiate, we were never part of this deal until more recently. As you know, when you came to us maybe 3 or 4 years ago, at that time you were going to purchase the Coliseum site, put the new stadium at Howard Terminal, but also had plans to build the Coliseum site into fields for young people, do some housing development and mixed use out there. And then things changed. So you might want to address that, because we had seen drawings both for Howard Terminal as well as the Coliseum site at that time. We haven't been, just let me finish and then,
Yeah, go on.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So, we haven't been part of the negotiations regarding the use of Howard Terminal, because as you know, we were in negotiations with your organization about purchase of the Coliseum site, and we wanted to get out of the sports business. But I guess a couple of questions. One is how final are, I mean, I know the city has only done a non-binding as well, but you have had months of negotiations, and Supervisor Valle mentioned, this issue of how much low-income housing and all this. How final are those? I mean, is there any, my understanding was that we would not participate in any of those discussions. Are those discussions final? And, how much say would we have? Is anything changeable in terms of what's already been negotiated? So that's one question. The other question I have related to that is, of the $411 million of community benefits, what portion of that are the A's paying for? So those are my questions.
Yes, Supervisor. Yeah, I can address all those points. First of all, on the original concept of the Coliseum, that was always a separate transaction for our organization. We are still committed to having a redevelopment of that location, especially if we build at Howard Terminal. But it hasn't really been the top order of our organization or business because we've been very focused on getting approval of the waterfront ballpark project. But it remains something that we think is very viable and can be beneficial for the entire region. So that is still something that we hope to work on in a meaningful way. Secondly, in terms of the agreement with the city, that is not finalized yet. So I guess that's a positive and a negative. The positive is that it could still incorporate feedback from folks like yourself, but we still remain in negotiations with the city to finalize a development agreement, and we're waiting on some documents from the city to make that happen. So that's something that's ongoing, but we're working as quickly as we can to get to something that could get voted on by the city council. And then I think your last question was really around the community benefits. I mean, all the community benefits and everything we're doing, from the environmental sustainability to the union jobs to the affordable housing, it's all coming from the project. And so it's coming from the A's. We're fronting most of the things that have to be done, we front. And then over time, sometimes we get reimbursed, like with the on-site infrastructure. If there's not enough money, we're at risk at that. So, on many measures, like it's all really being funded by us. It's a mix of dollars out of our own pocket as well as project dollars, and the timing of that depends on the different commitments and what we're doing. So that's been the approach to date. That could change obviously between now and a final deal, but that is what we've anticipated up until this point.
Okay. Yeah. I understand the issue of the community benefits, but it's being funded by the building of the project, not direct dollars from the A's. Is that correct?
Well, it depends on what community benefit. For instance, we're handling the sea level rise issues, which is the community benefit, or we're handling the fact that we're going to have operating union, SEIU or HERE employees. Those are things that we all pay for directly. But there might be some things like the infrastructure where we pay up front and then over time we get reimbursed. So it's kind of a mix of mechanisms. But at the end of the day, the community is going to get those benefits. Without the project, there are none.
Because we're being asked to fund, we can go more into this later, but the parks, the low-income housing and whatever. So that funding isn't coming from you all. It would be coming from the public coffers, correct?
But it's money that our project generates. Without the project, without us investing the $6-7 billion in upfront capital, it doesn't exist. There's no.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you say we could be part of the negotiations, we're not going to be a formal part of the ENA that you write with the city, correct? We can always. Anybody can give you feedback, but my understanding, and the mayor can speak to this too, is in the negotiations, it's between the two parties. Is that correct?
That's the way it's been to date, but everything is not finalized. So any stakeholder, whether it's the county or unions or community groups, can obviously still weigh in on how it gets finalized between now and a final city council vote.
Okay, and one last question. In terms of the project labor agreement and what's been negotiated up to this time, say with labor or with surrounding neighborhood or whatever, you have been in the port, you all have been engaged in lengthy discussions with them. Is that correct?
We've actually signed on to the MAPLA, which is the project labor agreement on anything that's done in the port, which includes obviously the main provisions of their PLA. So we've signed up to that. We've also signed agreements with all the unions we currently work with, Unite Here, SEIU, Teamsters, building trades, folks like that, on both operations and also construction. So we've done that. That's been around for almost 5 years, a lot of those deals. And some of them are holdover. We're all union at the Coliseum right now, Supervisor, as well.
Right. No, I think those deals are great. All I'm saying is that in terms of some of these negotiations, we're kind of late invitees to the dance. Because originally the A's actually are not the ones who asked us to participate, correct? It was the city who asked us to participate.
That is correct. We had a different proposal at first that didn't include the county. I think we've heard from the city and from their public policy makers that wasn't viable. And so now we're here to see if this could be a viable path. And we're supportive of getting to a binding yes as soon as possible, to see if all the parties can come together to make this incredible vision a reality.